Summer's here, and Nordstrom has everything you need for your best dress season ever. From beach days and weddings to weekend getaways and your everyday wardrobe. Discover stylish options under $100 from tons of your favorite brands like Mango, Skims, Princess Polly, and Madewell. It's easy, too, with free shipping and free returns, in-store order pickup, and more. Shop today in stores, online at Nordstrom.com, or download the Nordstrom app.
Member Week is here at Lowe's. Don't miss your chance to get up to 40% off hundreds of items like paint, outdoor and home essentials, and more. Shop our exclusive deals happening in-store and online now through May 14th. Not a rewards member? Join for free today and get ready to save more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority is using Google AI to create smarter tolling systems and improve traffic flow for Texans. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello and welcome to 4Kids Flashback. My name is Tara Sands and I am joined by
Steve Yurko.
We will be your co-hosts today on this very manga-heavy episode of 4Kids Flashback. We are a podcast, if you're new to the show, we're a podcast that goes behind the scenes of a company called 4Kids that produced shows in English like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokémon, one of the first One Pieces. We do a deep dive, and even though our guest today didn't work at 4Kids, I think his work will be really interesting to people who listen to this show.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a bit of a detour, but it's a topic I'm passionate about. I'm a fan of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, reading it and Shonen Jump way back in the day, and it's obviously a very the early volumes are a very different story than what people might have seen on Kids WB way back in the day.
And he was an editor and also wrote a column for ANN. And I mean, he's had jobs just in so many areas of this industry. So, I mean, he's really an expert about this stuff. So I'm super, super excited for you guys to hear from him today. Steve, I thought of you because I signed something recently and I want to see how you feel about it. So, okay, it's a One Piece thing. And I immediately, whenever anyone gives me a One Piece thing, I immediately say, I was in the 4Kids version. And then they think for a minute. And they're like, oh, that's okay. They don't always know that.
No one's ever like, we know. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes they do. It's like half and half, probably. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, yeah, I think this time he knew, or I don't remember. But either way, he was like, that's okay. And he had a quote for me. And I've never signed a Kaya quote before. And I had forgotten. He goes, yeah, you were the one who gave them the ship. Like, you're so important to the story. And I was like, oh, like, I think of myself as my character as being gone so quickly that it's not that important. But I love that this was his take on it. And he, like, my line was something like, I heard you guys needed a ship. And I was like, that's a cool thing to write on a big One Piece Funko Pop.
Nice. Yeah, it's, it feels either like a longtime fan or a recent fan. Yeah, because to me, I don't know, I would argue about the significance of most of the characters. I'd be like, no, they serve a very important part of the story. But yeah, because Kaya is very crucial to the the formation of like the crew, because she gives them their first ship, and the relation with Usopp there, like, yeah, I would say, Kaya has a part to play. And
yeah, and I think that's just me being like, oh no, because a lot of it's what happens off screen for your characters that you forget about, that like that ship is still there, and that's part of what you know what I mean? Like, I'm not there. I'm not working, but like...
I wonder, maybe I should bite my tongue.
What? Oh, they get what?
Developments happen.
Oh, yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying that first season and those first early years. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also you forget the other characters talk about you, and not just me, but in general, like, there's so much that, like, I died in I won't, no spoilers, but I died in an anime that was out recently, and I didn't know because it happened without dialogue. And it happened like she was on screen, but I was told by a fan that I died. And I was like, oh man, I guess that job's over. Yeah. So.
That's crazy. I don't know. It almost feels like the 4Kids thing where also you don't hear back. It's like, the recast thing, which is very different, but.
That's different. Well, this was also because it's a simuldub. I didn't know week to week when I was going in. You know what I mean? So it was normal for me not to go in. Like, it's different when we're working so closely behind the Japanese.
Right.
And when we have a whole season to do at once. And then you kind of know. That then, like, the director might say to you, but, like, often then the director hasn't seen it yet. So no one tells you.
I feel like they'd give you a heads up. It's like when like an actor finishes on set and it's like, they filmed their last scene.
No. Well, no, and also you have to remember we're not always, I mean, I happen to know these people personally, but a lot of times they're just booking you through an agent. They're not going to then take, like, the person who's scheduling doesn't necessarily know what's happening. Like there's a chain. So it's like, yeah. So yeah, I had no idea, but it is kind of a very 4Kids.
Bummer. It's kind of like how people are like it. It's like I'm finding out on social media, like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's like when people, I don't know, like that's been a trend of like, I didn't realize I lost my job till I checked Twitter or something like that.
Oh,
I see that happen.
The worst. I've had that happen. Oh yeah, definitely had that happen to me. Doesn't feel great.
No, same with dying.
Yeah. I don't want to find out on Twitter that I died.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And I just will say, I will never call it X. If I do, someone yell at me if I ever do that.
Yeah. Assume I've been kidnapped and replaced.
Well, that's Mokuba's job, is to get kidnapped. But, I mean, you're talking to the kidnap champ.
But if Mokuba says, like, I paid for my blue check mark, that's when you have to be like,
Well, unless there's new ownership or the whole thing is, yeah. Well, that's another podcast. But anyway, I just like the name. Honestly, I like the name Twitter. I thought it was a good name. And I think there was a way to have kept. Okay, this is a tangent we don't need to go on. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. It's kind of like how, like, Skype, which will soon... RIP very soon, but that used to, like, it came with its own verb, Skype.
Yeah, totally. And that leads me into something that is the name changes in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is something I am sure we're going to talk about a lot today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely stuff I want to ask about. As far as I know, like, I don't know too much about the choices going into this adaptation of the manga, so... forgive me if I'm asking simple questions here for anyone listening that already knows, but...
No, I want to know it all. And I was surprised in looking at the manga for Yu-Gi-Oh! That there's little editor notes in there.
Oh, the translation notes, probably, or some other stuff.
Yeah, but and I'll ask him about this, so sorry to say it twice, but like there was a thing when they say, get me my AD, and then it said editor note. AD means... assistant director. Like that was a line in the thing, or like they pointed out when the name had changed in the anime, so that if someone was watching it, they were like, "Oh, that's that." That was fascinating because I've never seen anything like that. Our guest just entered our Zoom waiting room. We will be right back with Jason Thompson. Our Our guest today is a guru in the manga industry. I'm so excited to talk to him. He's rolling his eyes when I say that, but he is. He worked at Viz, working on shows on manga like for Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece, lots of other shows, but those are the 4Kids-ish ones. He worked at Anime News Network, at in all types of Japanese games. He's also an artist. We're going to focus on the 4Kids stuff today, but honestly, we could do 3 hours on his career. Thank you for being here, Jason Thompson.
Thank you so much. You're so kind.
Well, no, it's impressive. I mean, to be completely honest, I know very little about manga. And we talk on this podcast about how back then we wish someone had told us to look at a manga or read a manga, because as actors on the shows, it would have been really helpful for us. But it wasn't something really talked about at the 4Kids offices.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, the manga and anime licensing were handled differently. And actually, we had a lot of, I don't think there was a lot of coordination at the time. It's probably more tightly integrated now, but I know for sure we were kind of doing our own thing in a way, and a lot of the names and certainly the translations were really different.
Yes, especially with Yu-Gi-Oh!, I would guess.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed working on Yu-Gi-Oh! I worked on a lot of manga for Viz. I've never worked directly on anime, but I worked for years for Viz, editing the graphic novel versions. And I worked on a lot of the Shonen Jump titles, but I have a special fondness for Yu-Gi-Oh! And I've got all of the, I think, 38 volumes right here at my desk, which I've saved over the last 20 years, my lord.
Wow. I know. I can't believe how long it's been. So can we go back a little? I'm curious how you got into this industry, when you first discovered manga, if you speak Japanese, like all these things that led you to this job.
Well, I kind of stumbled into anime and manga. In college, we would see like shows like Akira, Ranma 1/2 at the anime club, so I kind of was aware of it. This is in the 90s. And then when I actually got a job at Viz in 1996, I somehow must have bluffed my way out of that job, because when I look back, I really didn't know anything about manga. I thought I did, but I didn't. I certainly didn't speak any Japanese, and honestly, I'm still not fluent in Japanese, and it's gotten much rustier over the years. But but then I knew even less. But somehow here I am working at Viz, and at the time, Viz was like a 15-person or 20-person company. It was very small. It was just a little office in San Francisco, but still, this was the time when the whole anime and manga business was so much smaller that this little company produced most of the Japanese comics, manga in the U.S. And so I kind of weaseled my way in there, and within a few years, I was lucky enough to be editing, titles like Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto for a little while, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Uzumaki, and a bunch of others. And, my background, I actually wasn't the most manga and like Japan aware person who had applied for the job, but they were like, oh, well, you're an English major and your writing, it seems okay. So, hopefully you can do this professionally. So, hopefully I didn't disappoint them.
It sounds like they kept you around for a while, so I think you did okay.
Yeah, I didn't leave Viz until I worked there from 96 to 2006, and then I continued to work for them freelance for many years after that. But the peak years for Viz, for me, it's still going strong. But the peak years for me were from like 2002 on, because then they got they kind of got the big Shonen Jump license, and there was a lot of company shakeups. But Viz was always actually a subsidiary of Japanese companies. So a lot of money money and attention suddenly got poured into it from the Japanese side, whereas before it had been almost sort of like an afterthought or a hobby. But suddenly, once, like, basically it really started with Pokemon, right? Once Pokemon sort of, made people start to take notice of Japanese animation, and then Dragon Ball and the 4Kids stuff, it really, then that sort of sent shockwaves which reached Viz, and Viz was like, hey, we can actually sell some of this stuff. This is great.
So what's the process when a new title gets acquired? Like a new manga comes in, it's all in Japanese. What happens next?
So the way we would have it was we kind of go from two sides, or let's say three sides. So there's the editors, there's the licensors, and there's the fans. On the one hand, you have the editors at Viz, like people like me and some other people who would, we'd try to keep aware of what was going on in the Japanese market. And the office we had subscriptions to all these Japanese magazines at the time because, this is way before. This is the late 90s, so it's way before
Yep.
there was online comics. And we were right next to a bunch of good Japanese bookstores in San Francisco. So we just kind of try to look for stuff that's coming out in Japan that we thought would be good. But then on the other hand, the licensors, like these companies in Japan, these publishers like Shogakukan, Shueisha, who were like the main companies that ended up having a share in Viz in the USA. They would occasionally get the idea that they really wanted something to be published in English. And they'd be like, hey, do you want hey, this artist thinks it would be really cool to be published in English. Do you think that you could publish their stuff? So some of the decisions came top down like that.
Okay.
And then lastly, the fans, because sometimes the editors would be caught off guard and it would be something that we wouldn't really be aware of that suddenly everyone would start to love. And, and then we'd be the ones trying to catch up and publish that stuff that everybody really loved. And as and the truth is that, as really, even at the time, in the 10 years I was working there, the strength of the internet and the internet fan culture grew so much that, we were really struggling to keep pace with all of the stuff that fans were aware of and wanted, and also to keep them from just pirating it and just getting it all online and trying to get us to get them to buy the actual books. So it was it was a fun ride, and that and it's still like that. I think they still have they have a certain amount of freedom. They get a certain amount of this very esteemed artist demands that you publish his work, and then they get a certain amount of whoa, this is really popular. The kids are into it, so we got to do it.
So, is there on staff at Viz a Japanese speaker, or is the original licensor sending you a translation? Like, how does just the logistics of all that work?
So I'd say probably about, I don't know what it's like now because I haven't worked there for years, but at the time that I was at Viz, it was a mixture of native Japanese speakers, people who had studied Japanese, and not everybody there needed to speak Japanese, just people who are doing other kinds of work like design or marketing or whatever. And I honestly was one of the editors who didn't speak Japanese. I kind of picked it up as I went along. I took classes, but that wasn't necessary for what I was doing at first because, we had professional translators. If something looked good, we'd send it out and we'd have the translators do the script for us. Of course we have, we wouldn't, of course, but it just but the actual assessing of this is cool, this is a cool title, this is, this looks good. That was something that we'd be reading it. The people who could speak Japanese would be reading, or in some cases, even before I could read Japanese, I'd just be picking stuff up and being like, whoa, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, this looks crazy.
And it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read a little bit of something you wrote, and I'm going to put links to some of your articles and stuff in the show notes.
Thank you.
But can you tell us a little bit about specifically Yu-Gi-Oh? I remember you saying something like everyone thought it was stupid, or so this title
quote me
comes
on that.
in.
Okay. But go on.
Okay.
Quote me. Well, let's continue.
So what's the process? This comes in, how do you divide up the work? Are you I want to work on this? What did you think of it at first? I want to just also know the timeline of what the show and the manga.
Yeah, I just want to add on that question too, because I'm curious when the whole Shonen Jump thing came in stateside, when it decided hey, maybe it was Shueisha come in you should do this in the US. I'm curious when that kind of started up, and then how and what titles that were what the process was in choosing what titles were going to go into this magazine.
Yeah. So. Okay, so for Shonen Jump, we just knew that the manga and anime market was getting bigger, and I mean, because it was really ramping up, like, it was Pokemon and the first 4Kids titles and Dragon Ball Z. So it was actually 2002, I think, that it kind of came from two sides because was approaching the Japanese Shonen Jump people, which is one of like probably the biggest kids publishing concern in Japan, and they were trying to get the rights to these titles, and at the same time, the Shonen Jump people were kind of they were, they're very, they know they've got the cool stuff that everybody wants. So they were, we'd been sort of flirting with them for years, and they let us publish Dragon Ball Z, but they were kind of holding some of their other titles back. So finally, what happened was that they actually wouldn't let us publish us. They wouldn't let Viz publish their titles unless they acquired a controlling stake in Viz, basically. So they basically kind of bought into Viz because Viz was already owned by another Japanese company, and it became co-owned. So there's a certain amount of Japanese publishing industry hijinks and corporate intrigue that was involved, I'm sure. But basically, we kind of knew we were going to do the Shonen Jump. For a little while we were going to maybe give it a different title, but then we were like, nah, people already recognize the term Shonen Jump, and it's not even if people don't know what it means. It sounds exciting. It sounds cool. I mean, not like they called it Yu-Gi-Oh, right? They didn't call it the Game King.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
Out here, there's no one way of doing things. No unwritten rules. And no shortage of adventure. Because out here, the only requirement is having fun. Bank of America invites kids 6 to 18 to golf with us. For a limited time, sign them up for a free 1-year membership, giving them access to discounted tee times at thousands of courses. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/golf with us. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Restrictions apply. See BofA.com/golf with us for complete details. Copyright 2025 Bank of America Corporation.
McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. I hope you're ready for the most dippable chicken in McDonald's history. Dip it in all the sauces. Dip it in that hot sauce in your bag. Dip it in your McFlurry. Your dip is your business. McCrispy strips at McDonald's.
So yeah, it was like 2002. We started work. I was working on the pre-prep for Shonen Jump all year, while also working on our other lower selling titles. And then 2003, I think, is when the first issue actually came out. But so this is like, and during the time, yeah, it was really kind of a wild ride. People, the whole, like the company was going through a lot of shifts and becoming a more corporate, quote unquote. Although I think it's still pretty loosey-goosey as companies go.
How did Yu-Gi-Oh kind of fall into your hands?
Okay.
At this point?
Yeah. So basically I was sort of aware of Yu-Gi-Oh, but honestly, I hadn't read it, until it kind of came onto my radar as a potential Shonen Jump title. And at the time, I would say that most of the people who were working there, were I mean, they were in their late 20s to late 30s, and they were into more like they were into more like the anime that was more aimed at like older teens and adults. Like they were into grown-up anime about grown-up robots, and stuff like that. So there was a lot of people who were into like the really deep, serious historical anime manga or whatever, and a lot of people who were into, but just generally like even fandom, it was more like a little older, right? It was like college age people, and they were into like cyborgs and science fiction and like fantasy and stuff, but Yu-Gi-Oh, obviously, its core audience is probably like junior high, elementary school, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the Japanese Shonen Jump core audience is like 12, it's like 10 to 14. And so I had like read a review of Yu-Gi-Oh that like some of the other people over the office had done, and they were like, "This sucks." They were like, there were like four, the round table, like four people that they would do these reviews, and they were like, "This is terrible." They all hated it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, well, but actually, but so yes, now I can tell the truth, but no, the truth is, I was like, okay, well, let me check this out. I might be working on this as an editor." And I read it, so I read it all. It wasn't actually all finished yet. The whole like Millennium World and Pharaoh stuff
Mm.
was still going in Japan. But I read all
Oh,
that there was, and I kind of got into it, because there's something about that kind of shonen, that kind of boys manga that's sort of like that's very appealing to me, really. And I it's got that kind of I love that like over the top drama emotion, and I love the cliffhanger fight. I love the vaguely sublimated homoeroticism. I love all of that. Kind of
hmm.
I love all of that stuff. It's really just I mean, I obviously love some titles more than others, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Just kind of, I really got into it, and it really became very enjoyable to work on. And also, I'm a nerd. I used to play Magic the Gathering, and which may have something to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! And I used to play, I still do work for Dungeons and Dragons actually. So
Oh, cool.
honestly, I really liked the Monster World storyline, which I don't think was done in the American animation. I might just be in the graphic novels. Well, there's the whole role-playing game, magic role-playing game in Egypt where they're manipulating pieces on the board and stuff.
Hmm.
So they kind of there's some kind of that, but yeah, in the original graphic novel of Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, originally the plot is very different from the anime, right? There's this whole like stuff where at first he's just playing a bunch of random games and it's kind of goofy and silly, and he's like playing like the devil's ping pong and stuff like that, and then like blowing making bad guys. He's basically like Batman, right? But he makes people play silly games and then defeat
I
them.
don't know if you're familiar with the series Kaiji, but
Yeah, yeah, it's like gambling.
A lot of people have referred to early Yu-Gi-Oh as Kaiji for kids.
Oh my gosh, that's
So
a great comparison. Yeah.
mhm.
So, so it only so it's interesting because it's not like it's like seven. No, I think Magic and Wizards, as it was called, in the original Japanese, the card
Yeah.
game. That doesn't show up until volume two, and then it doesn't really come. Then it comes back in volume five, but it doesn't really become the story until volume eight, which is like
Hmm.
1,500 pages in, right? Right?
Right.
But that's the excitement. That's once you've gotten your mindset in this world of manga where like 200 pages is nothing, then it just breezes by. So yeah, I mean, I really I like Yu-Gi-Oh a lot, and I'm happy I got to work on it. I worked on it I worked on all of the original 38 volumes, and I worked on Yu-Gi-Oh R, which is a spin-off which wasn't ever animated, I think.
Hmm.
And I don't remember. I might have worked on a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh GX, but honestly, it's been a long time. But if I did work on it, it wasn't for very long.
Were there any changes that you would, when you were editing this and adapting it, basically, were there any major changes that you guys decided to make or were instructed to make to or was the goal to keep it as close as possible? Like, I have questions about like, what if the phrase just doesn't work, doesn't translate to English, like, or the humor or things like that?
Yeah. So the translators generally have a lot of leeway, and I, as the editor, I would be like the person who is supervising the translators. It's my job to, I mean, it's my job to write marketing copy and to kind of choose what gets, and to a certain extent, to choose what gets published. But and it was also my job to make sure that what goes into print doesn't sound terrible, and also to make sure that there's no like big blotch of ink on the sound effects covering, or like the page is
Oh,
cut off
right.
or something like that, right? Just technical printing stuff. But in terms of but the translation is obviously the fun part. And honestly, I don't know how it was at 4Kids, but I know we had a lot of leeway. There were some titles that Viz was doing at the time that were being very closely looked at. Like for example, Naruto. The fan base for Naruto was so intense that the translation really actually had to be very close to the Japanese, or people would complain, and
Hmm.
they'd know because they were looking at illegal scans online, right?
Yeah.
But still, they were very intense. So I remember their first team that worked on Naruto. They all basically quit one at a time because they were just so they got annoyed. But Naruto was a big deal and made a lot of money, so they obviously other people kept working on it. Um, but So with Yu-Gi-Oh, yeah, we had a certain amount of leeway, and we kind of were it was interesting because we kind of did have we're like marketing ourselves as like the real thing. This is like manga the way it really is. We're not gonna pull back. We're not gonna censor anything basically. Because our titles were like they were theoretically, if you look at the little age rating on the bag, it says they're for teens. And obviously a lot of these shonen jumps are being read by like 8-year-olds or who knows what.
Yeah.
But technically it says, oh, this is for ages 13 and up. So we were allowed to get away with a certain amount of stuff. And it actually, it was very fluid because the boundaries, I wasn't the person deciding necessarily, it was above my head exactly what we could get in because I'm pretty easygoing. But I mean, there may have been some dams that got slipped in there in the very early days before somebody was like, no, no, it's too much. No, no more dam. And
You've gone too far.
Yeah. I mean, I know there wasn't any bastard. I know there weren't any bastards, but there were definitely, definitely some dams. This is the really technical, like how do you translate these Japanese swear word stuff we were getting?
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah.
But, honestly, it's kind of more, even when we couldn't use damn anymore, or it's kind of more fun to come up with these really ridiculous, cartoon ways of getting mad at people,
Curses.
Yeah.
Blast you. I think I remember when this magazine came out, I think one of the biggest shockers for me was the Yu-Gi-Oh manga kept all the original character names.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, we did that too.
And I think that it was relates to what you were saying earlier, being like the authentic thing, the real thing.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so bold because Yu-Gi-Oh was like like a lot of the titles that were in Shonen Jump are established series already on TV. So for you guys to be like, well, these are the original names. I was like, how are they doing it? I'm like,
yeah. Now, I mean, the truth is, it's partly, it was partly just we were able to get away with it. Also, I don't think we were really coordinated with 4Kids ever, to be honest. I don't think there was a lot of I don't think there was a lot of working back and forth. So this is probably different now because it's been a long time, and I think that the different releases are more integrated now. But at the time, we were kind of like. I don't think I never had to talk to anyone who was involved with the anime. No, that's not true. One time when I worked on the graphic novelization of the Yu-Gi-Oh movie, and we were in touch with the people then. But that's a separate. That's just like a one-off, right?
Because that was kind of their project.
Yeah,
I guess.
4Kids.
So that's why.
Produced that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the timeline like? Was the manga out way before the show, or was the show out before the manga for Yu-Gi-Oh?
No,
in
the
terms
show.
Of the States?
In the States. Because
Yu-Gi-Oh would have been out on TV fall 2001. And towards the end of the following year, that's when this magazine was that January 03 issue was hitting shelves in December.
Yeah, you're totally correct. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So was there any conversation about maybe using the names? Because I love that there's editor notes in here under on the pages of like, this is Joey from the series. Like when all of us, like how does that process work?
I mean, really a lot of it was. We had a lot of freedom what we were doing, honestly. But I do know that early on, the decision was made that we would keep as many of the original Japanese character names and stuff as possible in order to brand ourselves as like the real, authentic Yu-Gi-Oh! That you can't see on television, right? So,
yeah.
So I believe we just were able to get away with it, and that was kind of our jam. Now, the one thing we did always try to keep consistent was the card names. So even though the character names are different in many cases, that we were coordinating with Kadami Upper Deck to make sure that the card names were correct when they'd appear. And sometimes I'd kind of try to have it both ways. Like I think I think like when Slifer the Sky Dragon shows up, I mentioned also known as Osiris or somewhere in there. Like, there's some weird things like that. I don't remember. I do have the volume in front of me actually, but I'm not sure which. There's 38 volumes. I don't remember exactly when Slifer shows up. So yeah, we were trying to keep all the card text to be as close to the cards as possible, because because we knew that was a big aspect of the
Hmm.
Yu-Gi-Oh fandom. But in
So,
terms
Oh,
of the
that's so
broader
nice.
story stuff, we had a lot of freedom.
so that wasn't even like a Konami thing. Like Konami didn't come in and be like, please keep the card names in the manga consistent with the product.
No, but I'll tell you a weird story.
Oh, please.
So Viz actually had difficulty. So when Viz got the licensing for Yu-Gi-Oh, I got the licensing from Shonen Jump. It became like the official licensor of Shonen Jump. It really changed things because I remember really early on, like in summer of 2001 or something, like the people at Viz were like trying to chase around the card people at some convention like San Diego Comic-Con or something, and just to try to cross promote with them. And they actually and basically they weren't returning our calls, right? Because they didn't care, But then, so basically, Shueisha or Shonen Jump had to intervene and be like, Viz is us. You treat them the way you do us." So then,
Yeah.
so then they started giving us tons of free cards and always answering our
Hmm.
phone calls. But yeah, we tried, but that's just corporate stuff. So yeah, in
Hmm.
terms of what the fans saw, we just tried to make the card stuff be as accurate as we could, down to the font, because we knew that would be a nice Easter egg for everybody. And also, of course, as many and almost all the cards actually are cards you can
Hmm.
buy, right? So we didn't want it to be anything. We didn't want there to be any inconsistency. But in terms of what was being said, I mean, I'm sure that I know your dialogue was mixed around a lot from the Japanese original. Neither
Oh
of us were,
yeah.
yeah. And I don't know how much improv you were able to do, but neither of us were using
Mm,
literal translations for sure, right? Um,
right.
I mean, we were even allowed to say like kill and die a little bit and stuff. So like
Hmm.
I said, we were a teen title, so we were able to get
When
No
you say
Shadow
a
Realm in
little
this
bit,
one.
yeah, but when you say a little bit, so there was a rule about how much you could say it, you're
Oh
saying?
no, not really. No, I mean it was pretty loosey goosey.
Okay.
It wasn't. I mean there were like they did come as it went along. They did. We had our standards, and I don't remember all the details now. There were different forbidden words and stuff. The
Hmm.
obvious ones. But no, there wasn't like a quota of how many times we could talk about people getting killed and stuff. And I was the editor, so I'd make all the decisions went through me. So occasionally I'd mention the Shadow Realm. Occasionally I'd just have I gotta okay die Yugi or whatever. I mean it's really it's kind of fun. It was a really fun working on the translation of that, and just adding so many exclamation points and having the most dramatic dialogue that I could. It was a blast.
What about humor that was hard? I know with like when they wrote with Pokemon and stuff, there's things that are funny in Japanese because they're culture. It's a cultural
Yeah.
thing. And what about the humor in this? Or was that hard to translate, or did you rewrite, or did you keep it intact with what?
I don't remember that many specific examples of humor. I mean, the night Yu-Gi-Oh, there was some stuff that we would have to cut in the Shonen Jump. I mean, wasn't so much of a problem, but we did have, we obviously we had to be pretty strict about it. Any of the like weird, the like, sexual stuff that occasionally shows up a little bit in
Hmm.
these comics. Not so much now, and more, and even, but which I mean, like there might have been some vaguely like maybe the hint of a dirty joke, something involving Anzu or something here and there that we would have to like either like sort of hide in the dialogue or something. Um, but anyways, that stuff would cut out. In terms of making stuff funny that was supposed to be funny and that we could have it be funny, it's kind of hard for me to think of examples.
Hmm. That's okay.
There's some places where, since it's a comic, there's some places where we have like an asterisk, like this it refers to this particular Japanese thing, or something like that. Just to have that like that fully authentic nerdy experience. But in other cases, we would just you know we just do what seemed right. The dialogue in Ego is so over the top. It's always on the verge of being funny, anyways, right?
Right. Sorry, I can't speak now. Was there any imagery you had to change or weren't allowed to use?
Yes, there was definitely some in the original Japanese. I think there's a few places where crosses are used, and I think there might even be some cards of this crucifixions being shown, not of Jesus, but of like another person being crucified.
Hmm.
There's some stuff like that we had to change. And Yeah, I don't, but I mean, still, we were other stuff that was fairly, that I'm sure you didn't have on TV. We were able to keep. Like, there's some scene there's some scene where like some guy gets his leg cut with a saw partially, and I mean, you just see like a moment of, like it just cuts into it for a moment, but yeah, but you do see some blood. Of course, it's just black ink on the page, so it's not as gross
Right.
as it is in animation. But
Yeah,
still,
that's fair.
it's not something that would be in the anime, I assume. Yeah, there's definitely some things that were cut. I can talk about anything in this podcast, right?
Yes,
Okay.
you definitely
All right.
can.
So you know Zork Necrophates, who's like in main bad guy in like the Pharaoh storyline?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so okay, I think maybe you know what I'm going to talk about. So in the original Japanese, in the very first printing, like maybe the first printing of the graphic novels. So he's like this big gargoyle demon looking thing. When you see him, he's got like bat wings and like an evil, scary face, and but he apparently has like a snake coming out of somewhere on his crotch. He has a,
Oh,
yeah, there's like a
I've heard about
dark,
this.
yeah, so basically has a snake penis. And it's not really addressed. It's just it's sort of ambiguous, but it's definitely coming kind of out of the front of where
Mhm.
his crotch should be. And then there's like a shadow and a big snake's head of producing. This was actually redrawn. We actually kept it like it was, but it was then later redrawn in the Japanese version because the people must have complained in Japan. Then it's redrawn so
Oh.
that it looks like, there's like a tail at it, so it's clearly coming out of his
Mhm.
butt. Um, Snake's tail, much more acceptable. So
Butt snake is way better.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if and that's something I don't know because I'm not involved in the reprint of Yu-Gi-Oh! So I don't know if they edited the original did make it into the first printing of the American one. I don't know if it was later changed in later ones or not. It might have, maybe nobody complained and it's still there, or maybe it got changed. You know, it's but that was something that, yeah,
Truly the
that was
most
a strange
absurd
case.
thing. It's something that I can't believe. It's not even like a cultural difference. I'm just
Yeah.
like, how,
But it's not like they refer to it. It's not like they call it
yeah.
out. It's not like Joey goes like, "Hey, that guy's got a snake penis" or something. It's just like sort of there. It's just like a quote unquote Easter egg, I guess. So yeah, but that's yeah. There were some images that we did change. Not that one, but there was some other stuff that was too weird or creepy.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the US. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
And I remember reading something you wrote about, like a derogatory name that was used in the original.
Yeah, so Shadi, one of the Egyptian guys who shows up, who's like the mystic Egyptian keepers of the millennia of the cards, right? Yeah, this was a no-brainer to change this. But yeah, there's this one. Yeah, Jonoichi refer like he basically called, using the Japanese word yaro for bastard. He basically calls him a turban bastard at one point. So obviously we weren't going to keep that in. I mean,
Yeah.
we tried to be really, even by our up. This is like 2004, right? So the standards were different, but it was still we were trying to keep we wouldn't want any racist crap in the Yu-Gi-Oh comics.
Getting back to an earlier discussion about name changes before I forget to ask, there were a couple that I recall. We mentioned that the card game was actually titled Magic and Wizards, but was changed to Duel Monsters. And I could assume that's just, as you said, to keep things, I'm sorry.
Consistent between
things, consistent with the actual card game. But Pegasus' name was actually changed because in the original, it's Pegasus J. Crawford. But in the Viz translation, you wound up going with the 4Kids Maximilian Pegasus, and I'm curious if you recall the reason for that.
So I remember that we did change that, but honestly, I don't remember who initiated it. I think Maximilian de Pegasus just sounds better, so I might have just been the one to say just go with the 4Kids version on this one. Pegasus J. Crawford sounds like he's the heir of a fried chicken company or something. But I kind of like the Maximilian, but I don't remember whether that was something that a decision someone else made or that I made, honestly.
One of our listeners had a question, and I don't know if this is something you can answer, but they wanted to know why things like ancient Egypt, they changed from 3,000 to 5,000, or the Tomb Keeper's initiation from 10 to 12, or the ages, like Seto was now the same age as the boys. Was that something that you guys had anything to do with? Did it change in the manga, or is this just anime stuff that they made decisions about?
So I know that in the manga it's originally I believe it's originally 3,000 years ago in the manga, and I think that was a 4Kids decision because which honestly makes more sense. It's much more historically accurate that there could be magical card duels in Egypt of 3,000 BC than 1,000 BC. There's less known about 3000 BC. So I guess I don't know, that was a 4Kids decision.
Okay.
I think we stuck with the 3,000 years ago thing in the Yu-Gi-Oh. As for the age of as for Kaiba's exact age, I don't remember, honestly.
I was curious if you ever got to meet Takahashi or any of the Japanese team while you were working on this.
Yeah, I did meet Takahashi. He was really nice. I sat in an interview with him. It wasn't a one-on-one interview, but I asked some of the questions. He seemed like a really nice guy, and he was interesting. It was interesting to me because he kind of started his career as a manga artist relatively late, I believe. Yu-Gi-Oh! From what I understand, he had done some manga when he was young, like in his early 20s, but then he moved on to do other stuff, like I think commercial art. But I know the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hadn't launched until he was 36, I believe. I think if I'm accurate with the ages here, Wikipedia would know better. But that's pretty old for a manga com, right? Because mostly they kind of get them young when they're able to work hard and get burned out, So I kind of respect, the older I've gotten, the more I respected him for that. He seemed like a nice guy, and it's a shit, I'm sad he's gone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have some questions about some other. I know you said that Yu-Gi-Oh is what you remember most. Steve, if you have any other Yu-Gi-Oh questions, throw them in now because I might switch to some other stuff.
Sure. You vaguely recall maybe working on Yu-Gi-Oh GX. I'm curious if that is true because I remember Yu-Gi-Oh GX. Now that was kind of like a shift where they started actually using the dub names of the characters instead of the original Japanese, and I'm curious if you recall that choice.
Yeah, so that was not a decision I didn't make, but like I was saying, I think as it's kind of it was the Wild West, quote unquote, back in 2002, 2004 when Shonen Jump was starting, right? And Viz wasn't coordinated with all of the companies, whether it was 4Kids or even with the card companies. So, but by the time GX started, I believe it was like 2009 or 2010 was when they started doing the manga of GX, and there was just more of an effort to make things to make things a seamless cross promotion, right?
Right.
That makes sense. Okay, so one of the questions we got from our listeners, they wanted to ask with One Piece, if you remember the Zoro to Zolo swap.
Oh yeah. I believe so. Yeah, I did work on the early volumes of One Piece. I only worked on about the first 5 or 6 volumes directly. I believe that was actually for copyright fears because of Zoro.
Oh,
I believe
Mm.
that Zoro, because his name is supposedly a reference to the swordsman Zoro, right? And Lilinoa is another. Even his first name is a reference to some other famous swordsman. But I believe that Viz was afraid of, or maybe I don't remember who initiated it, but yeah, there was worry about using the actual name Zoro, which might have still have been a trademark.
Hmm.
that makes more sense.
Yeah, 4Kids was the first to go with it. I think they played it safe, and
Okay.
and shortly after Viz changed it, and and but since then, One Piece got like a different dub. They went with Zoro, and now he's known as Zoro, and they haven't been sued yet. So
Yeah, I mean, maybe they were just playing it really safe, right? Or
I think
maybe,
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
or maybe, I mean, who knows? Maybe Zoro's out of copyright now. Maybe it might be. It's got to be close to 100 years old. Again,
Right.
Wikipedia, save us. So,
Right. Someone had a Yu Yu Hakusho question. You worked on volumes 1 through 4, and they said that Viz ran into some trouble early on because of the smoking and some of the injury. Some of the imagery was offensive when it was being distributed at scholastic book fairs.
oh yeah.
Did that affect you at all?
Well, this was a really extreme example of something pretty remarkable that Viz did, and I probably wouldn't do today. Um, so the smoking, yeah, I do remember some cigarettes had to get cut. But the main thing in Yu Yu Hakusho, and this is only something that shows up in this is a character that only shows up in like 1 or 2 volumes. Was the I don't remember his name either, but like there's this Buddhist fighter who has like a Buddhist quote unquote swastika tattooed on his
Yes.
head, right?
Hmm.
Or I think it's
Oh,
a
boy.
manji is what they're called in Buddhism. But
Hmm.
so yeah, and of course, and so Viz actually took the step of like they actually published it unchanged, and every panel they'd have a little note saying like, "What you were seeing is not a swastika; it's a manji, ancient Buddhist symbol." So yeah, kind of remark. I doubt I doubt they would do this today because I mean,
Right.
but the same thing happened in the same thing sort of happened in One Piece because there's that pirate. I don't remember his name, but
Whitebeard.
Whitebeard, yes, who had
Mhm.
originally his flag was a swastika basically, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe the one which is I don't remember whether the left going facing or the right facing is a swastika, but you look at it and you immediately think swastika.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting how times change because I don't remember what Viz did with that. They probably changed it, but Viz
In terms of One Piece,
yeah, but it's the main
by
thing
then Japan had changed
exactly
it.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think like I have them on hand, but I think Viz kept those, but of course there's the editor's notes. So
yeah, but no, right. It was like that until sort of like the first 30 volumes or something. Not that he was a
Mhm.
character who even showed up a lot then, but then in Japan they changed it. Yeah, um Shueisha also cares about they care about their international you know they're not trying to make edgy material, right? I mean, the editors may occasionally be having their little jokes, but mostly they're trying to make big popular brands that will make a lot of money and that will have international appeal. So yeah, they must at some point they must have been like, no, we just can't forget it. Gotta
Mhm.
rob the
Mhm.
swastika.
Yeah,
They're not-
different time.
yeah.
I mean, it's also, I think, something that even if there is an editor note, it's something distracting
Oh, sure.
from,
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
what you're reading. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I can imagine being so distracted by that.
I didn't edit those volumes where he appeared. I only think I worked on a very little. I only worked on a very little bit of Yu Yu Hakusho. I've read it all, and I like Yu Yu Hakusho, but I don't think I wasn't there when that guy showed up. I left YYH pretty early.
So I'm looking at some of your other jobs that you've had over the years. I mean, I'm assuming you were an artist all along, right? I mean, was all this leading up to the art career that you have?
Oh yeah, I mean, I worked an editor for Viz for 10 years, but I studied art in school also, and I was even doing comic books on the side when I was at Viz. So since I left Viz, I've done a lot of illustration. I've done a lot of work for games, and some movie design work. I've always drawn. I love drawing, and it's funny. For a while at Viz, I kind of left Viz gradually. I switched to part-time, and that's probably because I was a little burned out by the Shonen Jump. Honestly, this is around 2003, 2000. This is around like 2003, 2004. So I was really, yeah, I kind of managed to transition that I was working part-time. Because I remember there was one time when I was talking to one of the editors in Japan, one of the Shonen Jump people, and they were like, "Tell me," they were like speaking through a translator, I think. They're like, "Tell me, Jason, did you ever want to be a comic artist when you were a boy?" And I was like, "I still want to draw comics. What are you talking about?" You know, I mean, yeah. That was my like a quarter life crisis, I guess. But yeah, no, I've sort of moved from from working on manga to working on my own stuff, and just illustration in general. But I still do a little bit of manga work. Working on some titles for Kodansha right now, actually.
Oh, very cool. And
Yeah.
something that jumps out at me as a very cool job that you've had, and I would hate to not mention it, story concept artist on Minions and the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit and what a story concept artist is?
Oh, so okay. Well, my technical title was story artist. But yeah, story concept artist is what it was basically. So what it was the director they'd give me like they tell me what part of the story was was happening in the story, or like sort of a problem they're dealing with in the story, Gru is going to be, we want a heist scene here to fill this place, so can you give us some ideas for heists? And I'd come back and that week I'd do like, okay, here, what if Gru goes into Fort Knox and just steal all the gold, and he leans against the wall, and a drill comes out of his pocket and it drills into Fort Knox, and then he uses some bubble gum and plugs up the hole, and just what if the minion, and then what if it could be a climax of the movie? Well, what if the minions go to the Amazon rainforest, and they're looking for a magic amulet, and they fight like a man-eating plant. Oh no, what if they get caught in a black hole? What if there's a black hole? There's really so as you can see, some of these are very broad, throw anything at the wall kind of assignments.
Uh-huh.
Other cases, they'd give me more specific things to work on, how are we going to get Mario from here to here? What are some things he can see in the Mushroom City? So yeah, that's the kind of work that it is, and those were very fun. It was really fun to work on those. I've kind of sort of slipped into it because the director of Minions, Kyle Baldo, was a fan of my work for Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, okay. And Steve is a storyboard artist as well, and I see
no
you
way.
also do some of those things. So you have
Yeah,
that
we
in
said
common.
story artist, and I'm like, yeah, I guess sometimes I'm also referred to that, but referred to as such, but it's a completely different.
No, that's super cool.
job.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll brag for him. He works on Rick and Morty.
Oh, no way. Awesome.
How many of the Minions movies did you work on?
No, I only worked on Rise of Gru. I was
okay.
working on it for about a year and a half. It went in a lot of different directions. They were kind of there was a script, but they were trying out a lot of different things. I was working on it in a fairly early phase, and it's I think it's the way that Illumination worked. They'd sort of try out a lot of stuff, and often would be working really from sketches and ideas rather than no, this is on page 45, you must have this beat. Gru must deliver this line of dialogue. There are more movies that are made more. They're it's kind of like a juggling act, right?
Feels like a writer's room, like the classic writer's room.
Really, yeah. So I was sort of like doing visual contributions to the writer's room. So instead of pitching out, so I could just say, well, what if Gru is having on this chase scene and he's breaking into an armored car, or I could draw lengthy, not storyboard, so it's not at that level of moment detail, but I could draw my scene of how Gru is going to break into this armored car, something like that.
That's
That's
very
rad.
cool.
Yeah.
So I see presently you're working with Wizards of the Coast on the Dungeons and Dragons, the walkthrough maps. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do for those guys and about, what we should check out of yours? Plug whatever you would like.
Well, yeah. I mean, so one of the things that attracted me to Yu-Gi-Oh, as it were, was that I noticed the big Dungeons and Dragons storyline, and that's early on, which is where Bakura gets introduced in the original manga. So I know, yeah, I do a lot of work for tabletop game publishers, and I've like illustrations and stuff, and I've done some for Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of the stuff I've done for D&D is these sort of things that are like these little these quote unquote walkthrough maps that are basically I'll take like these Dungeons and Dragons, like scenes, dungeons, these scenes, these castles or like little caves or whatever. And usually they're done in the book. These are drawn out as there's a top-down view, so you can see where all the grids are, where you can put your miniatures. But I would like to draw them out in 3D, and then I'd draw all the monsters out in 3D, but not like a really real, but in a cartoony way, right?
Mhm.
And then I would tell these little stories with them, like we're like, oh, the paladin and the barbarian, they go in here, and then unfortunately they trigger this trap, and the barbarians turn to stone. The paladins have to drag around the stone barbarian around and use it to batter down doors and stuff like that. So I would that's one of the things that I've done for them with these maps, where it's sort of like a little. It's a little wacky D&D story that's told with this little map where you can follow the characters going from place to place. And these are all based on existing adventures, where that um so the way I got the idea actually from these old Family Circus comic strips that they would used to do, where
Oh
like
yeah.
yeah, where like it'd be a scene like on the Sunday where they have like the bigger version of the comic in color. It'd be like the first panel would be like the mother would be like, Billy, go to the store and get me some stick of butter, and then it'd show like Billy wandering all around the neighborhood. It's like then Billy went in the creek and like fell in the creek and got bitten by a crawdad or whatever. Then he tried to cross the road and the car swerved, nearly hit him, stuff like that. So yeah, that's something that I've done, and I'm working on more stuff like that now.
Are you surprised by how mainstream and popular D&D is right now? I mean, you probably watched this shift.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I am really surprised, and I'm really happily surprised too. It's really cool because it was but I mean, all kinds of nerdiness, all kinds of nerd culture has become more accepted. But with D&D particularly, the last 10 years have been just amazing.
Yeah.
Probably, I mean, I think partly it's because they have, stuff shows like Critical Role where you can actually
Yep.
see what's happening, right?
I watched my friends become superstars
Oh my
from
gosh.
that. Like all these talented people that I've known for years, all of a sudden, like get recognized everywhere they go.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, it's really wonderful because if you don't see that happening, you kind of imagine what people are doing when they're quote unquote playing D&D, and you're like, what? And it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to grasp, right? What are they doing? Are they just sitting around staring at each other? What's happening? So I'm actually making my own role-playing game now, which will
Oh, good.
hopefully be crowdfunding later this year, called Dreamland. So that's another
Oh,
project that I'm
okay.
working on.
Should we follow you somewhere to are you on Instagram or should we go to your website? Where can people follow you so that if you post about this stuff,
Oh gosh.
our fans can support you?
Hooray. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, and I'm still on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's all Mockman, Mockman, on Instagram.
Okay, great.
Or Mockman Press with a.
Okay, great. We'll put links in the show notes to all your stuff. And yeah, let's get that funded.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase of 16 weeks, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
Hey there, travelers. Kaylee Cuoco here. Sorry to interrupt your music, great artist BT Dubs, but wouldn't you rather be there to hear it live? With Priceline, you can get out of your dreams and into your dream concert. They've got millions of travel deals to get you to that festival, gig, rave, sound bath, or sonic experience you've been dreaming of. Download the Priceline app today, and you can save up to 60% off hotels and up to 50% off flights. So don't just dream about that trip. Book it with Priceline.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge pleasure. So, Tara, Steve, thank you so much for having me. Is there anything more I can answer, or
Can I ask just like a silly question, but I'm curious, do you have like a favorite game from like the early parts of Yu-Gi-Oh that they played, one of those one-offs?
The Shadow games, huh?
Yeah.
Golly, that's a good question. I mean,
because everyone remembers the cards and the duels from that. But I'm like, do you remember when they had like the Giga Pets and they were
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's got to be Monster World, right? It's got to be the fake Dungeons and Dragons with Baccarat Monster World.
Yeah.
But in terms of the other what else? Yeah, I'm actually reading you can't see it, podcast listeners, but I'm looking at the Yu-Gi-Oh early Yu-Gi-Oh volumes now.
I'll fill some time. Another one of my favorites, and this relates to Tara because
oh no,
I don't think Tara's quite aware. When Mokuba is first introduced in the manga, he's a little bastard.
Oh, season 0. Is this season 0 that you're
like
kind
the
of
season
talking
0
about?
stuff. He's a little bastard.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this.
Is it the poison hamburger? Do you know about this?
Oh, I know about that.
The poison roulette, right? Is that
where it's on like that little that little roulette spinning
I
table?
wish I had gotten to play him like that. Like, it's such a bummer. I mean, that would have been super fun.
And I think like right before that, or like while that's happening, Joey is in a knife fight with someone in an alley where they both have knives. They're biting onto knives, blades facing towards their mouth, and the goal was to punch the knife. And
oh my god,
yeah, it's
manga's crazy.
It's super brutal.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah, and I mean, in terms of those games, that's a tough one. They're all they're also demented. I mean, the beginning one, the very first one, where he's like just like doing this thing where you have to stab a knife back and forth between your fingers and your hand. That's really like, I really like wonder if they would even do that in the Japanese Shonen Jump today. I mean, possibly. There's also there's one card game that they play where it's like there's one card game where they play where the cards are based on like the 5 Chinese elements, like wood, water, like wood, metal, water, I think fire. I don't remember the 5 elements now. There's a couple of interesting games that they throw out in there, and you kind of really get the feeling that he's just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, right? I mean, Kazuki Takahashi. There's a lot of stuff there that's really cool. But in terms of which one is my favorite, which is the most over the top and twisted, I mean, they're all great. They're all great, and I do love when Kaiba and Mokuba were both just total jerks. Of course.
Well, I think Seto's still a jerk, but I mean, he's, but yeah. Any idea why Mokuba gets kidnapped so many times?
Oh my gosh. That's the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Is that all the characters, basically it's mostly always just about Yugi and maybe one other person, right? So all the side characters end up having nothing to do, but they're either like in the cheering section or they're getting kidnapped. So, it's kind of that's the problem with you have too many characters, because after you defeat the bad guys, they're like, yay, we're friends now, but they don't get anything to do. They just sort of stand around and be like, hey, Yugi.
It happens in Dragon Ball. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Were you surprised that Joey had a thick Brooklyn accent?
I don't know. Were you surprised?
Well, we spoke to Lisa Ortiz. We've spoken to both of them, but we were talking to Lisa Ortiz, who played Serenity, and she's like, yeah, never really understood why he had one and his sister didn't. Question for the ages. Well, thank you again. We'll let you go now, but really, honestly, this is so interesting and it's such a cool side of the business that we haven't gotten into before. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, after we finished recording, Steve and Jason realized that they might have recorded a One Piece podcast together at some point. We're not positive, but it could have happened.
Sometimes like, are you from the One Piece podcast?
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, but it could have been another One Piece podcast. But
it was like 8 to 10 years ago, so it probably was yours. How funny. So you guys have a lot in common.
Mm-hmm.
Artists.
No, a very
One
interesting
Piece,
guy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about like, a very like interesting career trajectory and it's like many different things. Seems like he's not slowing down anytime soon. I wish him the best of luck.
Yeah, very cool. And I mean, again, it speaks to what I've called the unofficial theme of this podcast, just living an artistic life and not knowing where it's going to take you. And sometimes that it doesn't seem like the natural progression, or you think I'm not doing what I should be doing, but you probably are, and you got to just stick with it. So very, very, very cool guy. Very, very kind to take time to talk to us. And he was somebody, I told him after, was requested by one of our listeners. So if you guys have a suggestion for someone like that, we are always open to doing it. We can't always find them. They don't always say yes, but that is how we found a bunch of our guests for the podcast. So thank you guys.
Jason's someone we might not have considered, obviously, because they didn't work at 4Kids, but I think we wound up having a really interesting discussion on something 4Kids adjacent, which we've done in the past, but answered a lot of questions that I was always curious about. And I
love it. We got
thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I love we got into Critical Role. I was just texting with Sam today, who's, one of the Critical Role guys. And it really, they to me are the prime example of how nerd culture has just broken into the mainstream. And I just could not be happier for them. It's just bonkers. Like, and I don't, they didn't set up to dominate. They set up to be like, this could be fun.
Yeah.
And again, another example of like, do what you love and you don't know what's going to happen. Don't do it for the sole purpose of that. But
no,
you just don't know what the side effects are going to be, and that makes me happy. So if you like the show, we always appreciate your support. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/4kidsflashback. $5 a month. You get episodes early, ad-free, access to our Discord, blah, blah, blah. Subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe, rate, and review. If you like the podcast, you know what to do. Subscribe, rate, and review. If you could give us 5 stars, that helps other people find the show, writing reviews and all that stuff. Check out our YouTube channel. There's a ton of stuff on there for kids related. But YouTube's so weird. You got to put that at. So it's like, so youtube.com/@4kidsflashback. Steve, should they write the word 4?
Absolutely not. Make sure it's the number 4, not the full word 4, FOUR.
Yeah.
No.
So that's the deal. We will.
Catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to maji.media. Thanks for listening.
Hi, it's Ashley and Jess with Wellness Reality Check. We are 2 health practitioners, moms, and best friends trying to navigate the world of holistic health in a balanced, productive way that brings health to our lives instead of dogmatic extremes. We'll be breaking down health trends, interviewing your favorite health influencers, and always keeping it real. We hope this podcast brings listeners back down to earth, providing a dose of reality in the often idealized world of health and wellness.
Wellness Reality Check. Follow the show now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at wellnessrealitycheck.com.